Hi, everybody. This is Dawn Mitchell, and welcome to Dawn of Sports. We've got an awesome guest this week. I mean, we do every week, but Chris Hawkey is not only a dear friend of mine. You guys all love him, and we're going to talk sports. We're going to talk music. We've got it all. So stick around. Jim and I are really excited about this conversation.
Yes, this is Dawn of Sports, part of TalkNorth.com. You know the lineup by now. I think we have the best lineup. Oh, I'm sitting here next to a KFAN guy, so
yeah,
I don't want to insult him. But
go ahead.
We do have Russo, LaPanta, Gorg, Randy Shaver, John Millay, Jeff Diamond, John Krasinski, Roy Smalley, Lavelle Neal, Dawn Mitchell, Outdoor Content, and Jeff Diamond, former Vikings general manager. We love what we're doing here, and we're really happy to have Chris Hawkey here today. Dawn, want to thank our sponsors, Rudy Luther Toyota, Minnesota Masonic Charities, and Natrium. Dawn loves when I talk about Natrium because I get so excited.
Your BFF.
We do a lot of women's sports, women journalists, power women on this podcast. Today, frankly, this is going to be a men's sports. We're going to talk Vikings, we're going to talk Cat, and we're going to talk about Chris's career. Dawn, take it away.
Well, Chris, everyone knows you from KFAN. They also know you from Vikings. But now, over in the past, I would say decade or so, your music, too, has just come full circle. You've elevated to many people's minds rock star status here. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's been, I've been singing in bands since I was 15. I'm 53 years old. And I've found that the two have served each other. The radio stuff and the band of, I'm out in the public singing for people and meeting people. And that has perhaps had some people curious enough to turn into the radio show. And the radio show obviously has had people come out to see the band. So it's both those things have worked together to create whatever this quote unquote brand is that I have going. And I'm truly the luckiest guy ever. I mean, I get up in the morning and my job is to make my friends laugh for 3.5 hours. So that's pretty cool. And then I take a nap and then I go out and sing and I get to pretend I'm Bon Jovi for about 3 hours. And then I go home and take another nap and do it all again the next day. So, and then I get to work for the Vikings during football season. So I feel like I did some really bad things in my past life because this one's a pretty good one.
Let's talk about all the bad things you did in your past life. That might be the best podcast.
Let's go.
All right. What do you think you were in your past life?
Man, I'm going to guess that I was some sort of a hedonist for sure. Because I still feel that way from time to time.
Oh, it kind of bleeds in there, right?
Yeah, it kind of does. No,
I will say you're ruining your image by being, you're ruining the image of all musicians by being a rock star who gets up early in the morning. The whole point of being a rock star is not having to get up early in the morning.
That is true. You're right. And you know a little something about that because it ain't easy to get up in the morning after you've been up screaming all night.
That is true.
That is true. But, I've been doing it for so long. And I'm not saying it gets easier because the first 10 minutes, my alarm goes off at 3:15. And for 10 minutes, I hate the whole world. I hate everything. I hate what I did last night, what I'm going to do today. After that, though, it's just really, really great to be able to do it. And we've been doing the radio show for so long now that it's kind of, and I hate to say it like this because it sounds like I don't care about it, but I do. It's kind of cruise control. I know what I need to do. I know if I don't get to the station by a certain time, the rest of the day's a wreck. So I know what I'm doing. I know how to do it, and I can kind of do it half asleep, and I've done that a lot.
Well, one of the wonderful things is so many people set their alarms to get up to listen to you, right? But they get to wake up and not put their makeup on, like for an hour, or if it's a guy, they can just kind of drink their coffee and they could put their makeup on too. I mean, I'm not judging, but what I love about it is all of my friends that listen to you guys, they feel like they're part of your family there. Like they feel like they're in that room with you, or you're in their living room or kitchen with them, and to have that over the years, we all know, being on the media side of the business, that it's a blessing. But the super cool that the Rubes and just all the KFAN listeners, they feel like you guys get them. That's a bond that's hard to build over time.
And I don't take it for granted. I mean, I could get emotional talking about it, to be honest with you, because I know it probably, and no, I know it doesn't sound like it when you listen to the show, but it has been part of the plan. when we first, Superstar Mike Morris and I started the morning show almost 24 years ago. The day after Thanksgiving this year will be 24 years. And the morning show before us, they were let go, and we were doing a 1-hour show in the midday. And we said, let's go see if they'll let us do it. So we walked down to Swedberg's office and said, how much you let us do the morning show? You don't have to pay us any money. And he's like, well, we're not gonna. That's number one.
That's how it starts.
And then he said, if you were going to do a morning show, what would you do? And I was just coming off 2 years of being the local producer, which is a fancy way of saying board op for the Howard Stern show when it was on locally. So I listened to every show Howard Stern did for 2 years. Literally. I didn't take a vacation. Every show. And that also meant that I had to listen to the other morning shows to kind of get an idea of what they were doing. And I love radio. I always have. So anyway, he asked me to put together a mission statement. I still have it, of what the morning show would be like. And I went home and I wrote this, very Unabomber kind of letter. And I
put
just
your hood
said,
up right there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a good point. I just said, I want to be positive. I think in this market, the one thing that it marks a lot of the morning shows that I listen to, and they're very successful, is a lot of negativity. And I want to be positive. I want to give people something to feel good about in the morning. They may be going to a job they don't like. They may be having troubles at home or financially. I don't want to give them more things to be mad about. And that's been the mission statement. And to build a family. I grew up listening to WLW out of Cincinnati, home of the Reds. I was born in 1970, the Big Red Machine, Pete Rose,
Boston
rest
Red
in
Sox.
peace.
Thank you very much.
I get what you're saying. I couldn't even find Boston on a map for most of my life, so it was the Big Red Machine for me. But WLW had these two shows, the morning show and the afternoon show, that were families. I felt like I knew them, and so I wanted to build a family show where exactly what you said, Don, where people felt like they were one of us sitting in the room, and we've been so lucky that we've been able to do that, and I've met the right people along the way.
Yeah, and I have friends that be like, well, did you hear? When I first found out about like the Skatriots bit and stuff like that, I'm like, I don't get it. And they're like, you're not listening. Like, we all know it's funny, blah, blah. And then so I said, well, I'll get up early and I'll tune in. I'm like, okay, that's I didn't know it was a bit. I'm like, Skatriots? How are the Skatriots? It doesn't even make sense because Patriots are winning, that kind of thing. And then when you get in there and you get the inside jokes, and then it's an honor to be in people's living rooms and kitchens. But it's harder, Chris. I just want to give you and everyone that is on the show with you, everyone on the Power Trip, it's just an honor. And it's harder, though, to have them feel like they are part of that. So kudos to you.
Thank you. We've learned so much along the way, but I think the biggest positive, the greatest thing that we had going for us was the expectations were so low. Literally so low when they gave us the show. I remember Mick Anselmo said to us, if you guys ever get a 3-share, we'll be happy. And when you're given such low expectations, you're given an opportunity to fail. And we did. We figured that out. I mean, Corey Cove, who's my co-host, sits in the big chair. He joined us as my intern about 5 months into the show.
Wow.
And then
I didn't know that.
Yeah, man, he was my intern. And then Saucy was my intern about 8 years into the show. And we found out over time that if we talked sports the entire show, it was obvious that we were creating controversy for controversy's sake, so it wasn't real. We were regurgitating facts over and over and over again, but even more so, we were bored. We would get bored. You can't talk sports for 3.5 hours. I can't anyway. I'm sure there are people who are more talented that can. But we found out over time, if we were more of a full-service morning show who focused on sports when it mattered, that people were right there with us. And that's been the formula for success. But the other thing, I mean, you guys, many of the guests on our show, Mark Parrish, Ben Lieber, Marnie Gellner, a cast of thousands, I like to say. I learned really quickly as well, if I pretend to be an expert about the Timberwolves, you can hear it. And
people can smell fake a mile away, too.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So instead, I'll bring Marnie Gellner in.
Yeah.
She knows the Timberwolves. Let her talk. She knows the Lynx. Let her talk. If I pretend to know hockey, I mean, it's my last name. You'd think I'd know something about it, but I've had skates on my feet one time and it hurt. So we bring Mark Parrish in. I mean, on and on and on. You bring in the experts to be the experts instead of pretending to be an expert. And then you go for the comedy whenever you can. It's just, man, we've been so lucky in running across and coming across people who like the show, and we like each other, and it's a family. So we talk about it's a show for 5 people. We say that because the 5th person is the person in the car in their house listening to us, and they get the inside jokes.
Yes, that's exactly. I just got chills. That's exactly what I was trying to say. The other thing you can't fake either is your love for the people that you work with. You can't fake if you're friends with Meat Sauce and Mark Rosen told me the guys at KFAN are a family. When he was going through losing his wife and going through things, he said the people that really took me in and just kind of settled me down were the guys at KFAN. And I mean, I'm getting emotional talking about it, but just to see how Rosie felt about you, I said, you can't fake that bond. And it comes across on air. And then sometimes when people have that bond with their coworkers, other people feel excluded. So, and you don't do that. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Man, I can't tell you how many times people within that building have been there for me, and vice versa. And that radio show, it's weird because we have a giant show. Guardsy gives us a lot of crap about how many people we have on the show, but it extends all the way into the afternoon, even though I don't see him very often. I don't see Dan very often, and so on and so forth. But it is sort of like a gang, but everybody's welcome. And I do love that. Talk radio is just a wonderful thing. What a wonderful avenue to communicate with people. And, people have been guessing that the terrestrial radio was going to die for a long, long time. And the factor they continue to forget is the local aspect and the human aspect. And I love satellite radio. I love podcasts. I love audiobooks. I love all of it. But you're never going to be able to replicate tuning in on a Monday morning, listening live to Ben Lieber talk about what he saw yesterday on the field. Mm-hmm. It's live and it's local, and it matters at that moment. You can listen to it in a podcast later. And I love podcasts, but when it's live and it's coming to you for free in your car, that's a big deal.
What I love just sitting here now is both of you, Jim and you, both being musicians and knowing sports. And my whole life, it seems that every sports person has this affinity to music. I don't know what it is. Even when I was in Boston, it was the same thing. A lot of the sports writers, Peter Gammons, was into music and then built like this big concert thing that goes on now back east. And then when I was in Chicago, it's the same way. I come here to Minnesota. And just that it's an inexplicable link. And you both are so talented at music too. I'm not saying that all sports people can actually sing and play guitar, but you guys can. Jim, it's kind of, you guys have that affinity, don't you?
I mean, I don't know when the first time I heard it was, but it might have been 30 or 40 years ago. Athletes want to be rock stars. Rock stars want to be athletes. Mm-hmm. It's just true. And because people in one genre admire so much people who can perform in that other genre.
Yes.
And we take it, athletes take for granted that they're always around other great athletes. They take it for granted. That's just what they identify with. And they're like, but how can that person get up there and do that on stage, and vice versa? Great musicians, they're surrounded by music all the time, but they can't understand how somebody could, dunk a basketball behind their head. It's been true for many decades.
Yeah, I agree. And I got to tell you, I mean, you gave me an experience that that I enjoy giving to people. And that is the first time that I played with you and saw you play. I was like, oh my God, he can really do this. And I get that so often from people who listen to the radio show and come out expecting me to not be able to carry a tune and to be a pretender, somebody who's doing it because I have the opportunity through the radio show. So I love that. I love singing. It's my first love. In fact, I got into radio because it was the closest thing to being a rock star I could do and go to college. I went to a broadcasting school back in Ohio. But singing has been my whole life. I suffer from a lot of anxiety and depression and OCD and all kinds of weird stuff my whole life. Being on stage and being on the radio and singing to people allows me to communicate to people without having to talk to them.
Yes. And probably touch a chord with people that they may not have been able to identify in themselves.
Yeah. Boy, that is very, very true.
Right? Like I'm feeling something I don't know, but Chris Hawkey's song just hit that.
Man, that is really, really true. Because, you and I mean, I would struggle to have a conversation with somebody about my song Happy, but I can sing it to them and tell them everything about myself in 3.5 minutes. Yeah, that's a really good point.
And that Take Me With You song, too.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. You're one of a handful of people in my life that ever pointed to that song. So thank you. That means a lot. It's a song about my mama, and it literally is. It's just here's all the things I've done, and I wouldn't have done them without you. So that's what it's about.
It also strikes a chord with me because I don't have my parents anymore, so I still can take them with me.
Sure.
You know, so it doesn't even have to be a parallel level. I think music can strike a chord on a level where it's like, okay, my parents aren't here physically, but I can still take them with me where I go.
Yeah.
No,
please go ahead.
I'll say, it reminds me of a conversation on one side with Royce. We're sitting around the office back when we actually went to the office.
Yeah, right.
And, Royce can get in that mode where his brain just starts churning,
Yeah, so good.
And he goes, not everybody likes TV, not everybody likes music, not everybody likes politics. And he just listed like 85 things. He goes, have you ever met anybody who didn't like music?
Right.
I mean, it's just so universal.
Yeah.
And we take it for granted, but it's so universal and it hits you at this gut level, this heart level. Sometimes hits you on the intellectual level too, but it doesn't have to. It reaches down into your soul when nothing else does.
Isn't that the truth? There's math to it, There really is. And what's the saying? Where words end, music begins. And it's so true because it could be a Stevie Ray Vaughan instrumental and it make you cry, there's something to it, you can watch a group of people at a concert in China listening to an American speaking band and they don't speak a word of English, but they're right there with them. It's a universal language and it really has saved my life. I don't say that to be dramatic. Music has saved my life countless times throughout my existence. And I like to say, I like to feed the river, I know that I'm never going to write a song that's going to sell 1 billion copies. I'm never going to write a song that's going to have me open it for the Rolling Stones or have, them open it for me or whatever, but I might write one song that one person hears and it gets them to play guitar and they may teach their daughter to play drums and their daughter might change the world. So feed the river.
I want to say, don't say you will never.
Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen because I have so many of your songs on my phone. Some of the old school ones, Cherry Hill, I love that stuff. And so I'll go home or I'll go visit some of my friends all over this country and they'll be like, what song is that? That's awesome. Like the Empty Bar. Are you kidding me? Like that is kind of like my friends like, let's put it on. We're at the beach. And like, who's Chris Hawkey? Because they're out in Boston or they're in California. So sometimes never say never. You just never know what lightning can be caught in a bottle and when. I mean, who's that singer? It's Eva. What's her last name? And she became a sensational star after she had passed from cancer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying this is going to happen to you. I'm just saying you just never know who can hear your song, fall in love with it, and it can explode.
Yeah. Anything is possible. But I think, and
it's just not your goal, perhaps.
Well, for sure. And, and there's a reason for that, too, if you don't mind me telling you a bit of a story. So you guys know the band, maybe you've heard of it. I was in a band called Rocket Club.
Yep.
And I'm back in that band again now after 8 years, which is cool. Just from time to time, we do it more for fun now than we used to. But so I'll make it as quick as possible. But this
it's a podcast. Take your time.
Yeah, right. Well, this is what happened. So I'd been singing and doing the radio, and I was around 37 years old. And this guy, Matt Kirkwald, the guitar player for Rocket Club, one of my best friends.
Who's awesome, by the way.
Yeah, he's great.
He's awesome at everything.
Yeah.
If he walks into the room, he's better on every instrument than everybody else in the room. It makes me sick. So he says, hey, would you ever want to be in a band that was kind of like the Eagles? I'm like, well,
No, I don't want to be. Like, who would ever say I wouldn't want to be in a band like the Eagles?
It's like saying you don't like music.
Exactly. But, I said, yeah. And he goes, well, I get these guys. You've met them before, but we really want to do with this band that is really focused on the vocals and the words to the songs. We want to kind of go after in the vein of the Eagles. I said, I'd love to give it a try. So we go to Matt's house. We sit on his screened-in porch, and we start singing Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Southern Cross.
Oh, man.
And we didn't, I swear to you, I can't believe it. I can remember to this day. I can remember calling Sarah Jane, my manager, after it was over and saying, I can't believe what just happened. Because we didn't communicate. I didn't say, I'm going to take the upper fifth. Don, we didn't discuss it. We just started singing, and it happened like the math, And from that moment, we became a band. And from that moment until the end of it was the most manic pursuit of anything that I've ever had in my life. And it was wonderful and terrible at the same time. After that moment on that porch, we released a record and got a little bit of traction, thinking we were like a Cities 97 band,
Right.
Kind of like Coldplay, something like that. And then we had a song called One More Day that we released that was part of a poem written by a gentleman who had lost a child. And we put it out as a fundraiser for this this group of people who help people who are in a similar situation. Anyway, so the song gets released, and one day we were in a van on the way to Duluth, and we got a call. Sarah Jane, my manager, again, was Rocket Club manager as well. Her phone rings, and it's a area code she doesn't recognize. She answers it, and it's a guy from Billboard magazine, and he said, I need information about your band because One More Day is going to be on the Billboard country charts this week.
Wow.
We didn't even know we were a country band. And honestly, we knew that K102 was playing it here in town, but it was part of their St. Jude thing. So They were raising money, and it's a great song. I didn't write it, so I can say that. It's a great song. But what we didn't know is San Antonio started playing it, then Spokane, Washington started playing it, then Tempe, Arizona started playing it, and suddenly, honestly, we're getting a call saying we were number 47 on the Billboard country charts that week. And 2 weeks after that, I was standing on the stage at the Grand Ole Opry.
Wow.
I was talking to Little Jimmy and Eric Church, and I mean, it was like, what has just happened?
Like,
what has just happened? I'm 38 years old at this point. And that's when it all started going downhill. Because I was an absolute dog with a bone in his mouth. Here I am at 38 years old, and in my view, in my a very real possibility that I could make all my dreams come true that I had when I was 15 years old. And we chased it. We opened for everybody. We went everywhere in the country. We bought a big RV, and we traveled, and we opened for Sugarland, and we Eric Church over and over again. I mean, just bam, bam, bam. And long story longer, we started doing these things called showcases. You know what showcases are? So it's the weirdest thing in the world. You go down to Nashville, and the record companies rent out these great venues, and they put you on stage, and they say, impress us. And so you're putting on a show like there's 50,000 people for 7 people. And you got to kill it because only everything you ever wanted is on the line. The third one that we did was for Sony, not for the record companies, for Sony by themselves.
That's pressure.
Oh my gosh. But we were great at that point.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me being a jackass. We were really great at that point. We had North Country had just come out. It made the Billboard charts as well. We're hitting on all cylinders. 7 people. We blew their doors off. After the show's over, our manager down in Nashville comes into the backstage area and says, congratulations. You guys are going to be sewn by Sony. They want it. We're going to do the deal.
Like, what?
What? 1:30 tomorrow, we're going to sit down and do the deal. So I fly home because I got to go to work. And starting to think about what at that time I still had younger kids. Everybody's kind of scrambling. What are we going to do? Because, we got to record a record. We got to go on the road. I'm going to take, what am I going to do? I got the radio show. I'm going to take a leave of absence. I got permission, all that stuff. 1:30 the next day comes and goes. 2:30 comes and goes. 3:30, we finally get a call. And it's our management. And she says, I'm sorry, guys, they passed.
Ugh.
Oh, the high and the low within 24 hours.
And we're like, wait, we haven't, I don't think I said anything since then.
Right.
What has happened? And she said the head of Sony New York, not Nashville, New York, was on a call with them that morning. And they were doing the deal, talking about how much money, the advance, this, that, and the other. And said, guys, I have to interject. I love this band. I love their songs. I love everything you've shown me. They're just too damn old.
Stop it.
And that was
Ageism at its finest.
That was it. That was it.
Too old?
Too old. And we were, compared to what they were signing at that time, this was, Taylor was still country. You know what I mean?
Right.
Everybody was basically a fetus with a guitar.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, that broke me in half.
Yeah.
Because we were signed.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
Right? And we took another year. We did another record. We had some more success. We had another song that did really well for us. But that broke up the band. We started getting mad at each other for no reason.
Yeah.
Just
because
dumb.
it wasn't that. It was the... Yeah, right.
Literally heartbroken.
Yeah, yeah.
And we broke up, didn't speak to each other for 8 years. And I didn't even listen to a Rocket Club song for 4.5 years. I started the Chris Hawkey Band. We went out and played shows with you, had some success, had a lot of fun, had a couple of songs made the radio, nothing as big as what Rocket Club was. But I learned after a while that my greatest mistake was that I wanted it so bad I didn't enjoy it. I would be on stage. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
I would be on stage singing to a crowd of 8,000 people, thinking about the next show.
Wow.
Because I wanted to make sure I was better, because I needed to get the record deal. I was so not present for these great moments. I saw a freaking video of myself not long ago, a video of myself singing for 10,000 people, and I don't remember it. It's me. I'm on stage and I am singing to this crowd of
present.
people. I wasn't there. So it took a major heartbreak like that for me to really remember why I do this and why I love music. It's not about the record deal and the money or the pursuit of greatness. It's about feeding the river because it's got to come out of you. And since I realized that, I've been so much happier and I've enjoyed music so much more. So that's a long story, but that's my story.
No, I was going to, while you were just saying that, I'm like, that's also a huge metaphor for life in general,
Absolutely.
Right? In terms of, there's so many things now that you think, wow, I wanted X, Y, and Z. Maybe I'm a better person because I didn't get it or through that heartbreak. But also it teaches you, I need a little more like mental resistance. Like one person's opinion can't change how I feel about myself or anyone else. And it's so easy to say, right? It's just one executive going, no, sorry, you know?
Right.
And
that was it. Yeah.
Wow.
But because I didn't get that record deal, I was here from my daughter's entire high school, Yeah. The radio show grew in ways I never would have dreamed. So I'm very fortunate that it ended up the way it did. And I'm even more fortunate that these last 10, 12, 15 years, I've been smart enough to be more present and enjoy my life more.
Wow. All right, we're all going to collect ourselves here for a second. And
I talk a lot.
Yeah, no. That's what you're here for. We appreciate you coming on. First of all, thank you for being here. Second of all, thank you for being so open.
Yeah.
That's what
it's beautiful.
You already surpassed. I had high expectations, and you've already surpassed them.
Good.
But let's keep talking. Just want to quickly take care of the business here. Thanks to Rudy Luther Toyota, great supporter of women's sports, great supporter of this podcast and this podcast network.
Ready for a women-forward car dealership? Rudy Luther Toyota empowers their many women on staff in sales, management, and service. Whether you are looking for a new Toyota or pre-owned vehicle, Rudy Luther Toyota has something for everyone. Every vehicle comes with a Luther Advantage. 10 cents off fuel and car wash discounts at holiday stations, Luther Advantage warranty, and 5-day return policy on pre-owned vehicles. Located just 5 minutes west of downtown Minneapolis, off 394 and General Mills Boulevard. And they're also hiring. Want to join the team but don't know where to start? Visit RudyLutherToyota.com today.
Thanks also to another great Minnesota company doing great things, Minnesota Masonic Charities.
When people think of the Freemasons, they often think of secret handshakes and unusual hats, and of course, the pancake breakfast. Minnesota Masonic Charities would prefer that you think about the work that they do right here in our community. Places like the Masonic Cancer Center at the University of Minnesota or the Masonic Children's Hospital and the Masonic Home in Bloomington. They are just a few examples of the important work that the Freemasons support here in Minnesota. As part of the largest fraternal organization in the world, Masons have consistently answered the call when it comes to charitable needs. I am happy that Minnesota Masonic Charities has chosen Minnesota Bound and this podcast as a place to help spread the word. We look forward to learning so much more about their many programs here in the weeks to come.
And now Dawn gets to get excited about me
BFF
getting excited
time.
about Natrium because I keep saying I started using their products long before I ever thought of them as a potential podcast sponsor. For somebody who, you talk, it's always amazing, Chris, how many high achievers we talk to. I'm sure you've talked to that have anxiety, that have worries, that have problems, that have, issues, and for me, I've always had this like buzzing anxiety underneath everything I do, and it probably is motivating, but it's also a pain in the ass. And it's really nice to have a product like Natrium where I can just take a little of the buzz off, not have to have an alcoholic drink, sleep well, relieve pain without having to, take 8 over-the-counter medications. So, hey, I'm just recommending Natrium because it works for me. Natreum.com. Natrium, there's probably a Natrium near you. If there's not a Natrium, there's their sister company, Wildflower. I know there are 2 Wildflowers right near where I live. They're beautiful stores, highly professional. They have dips, oils for your gut, balms for applying to if you have a sore elbow or you have arthritis, something like that. They have drinks. They have gummies, and it can be for, yes, you can get high with them. You can also just sleep better. You can also relieve pain. Just check it out. Natreum. It's great to be able to talk about a product that I use myself and that I love so much. Let's get back to this. Tell me how you started off. You said you started singing at what, 15?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you learn an instrument first? Did you learn singing first? How did your musical career develop?
My mom tells me that I have been singing, and weirdly enough, and again, you'll appreciate this, I've been singing harmony to everything my whole life. I've never sang the main vocal. I've always sang harmony, even if it doesn't exist. And apparently I've been doing that since I was a baby. And as I got older, I became obsessed with being a singer. That's just what I wanted to do. And when I was 15 years old, my mom was sick of hearing it. And there was an ad in the paper. I'm from a tiny little town in Indiana.
Which town?
It's called Union City. Right on the border.
My parents lived in Seymour briefly.
No kidding.
And where John
Mellencamp, my hero.
Yeah.
And everywhere I went, there was a sign. John Mellencamp took a pee here. It was everywhere.
Yes.
And I love John Mellencamp.
That's the best. So little tiny town. The closest big town was Richmond, if that helps at all. And so there was an ad in the paper looking for a lead singer. My mom legitimately picked up the phone and dialed the number and handed it to me. And then she drove me to the audition because I was only 15. And I went in. I was terrible. I sang a Bon Jovi song and I believe a Kiss song. And Mikey Weaver, the guitar player, told me a while ago that the only reason I got the job because he liked my T-shirt. He liked my T-shirt, and I was the only guy that auditioned, so I got the gig. I wasn't any good, but I've never been afraid to get on stage and sing or embarrass myself in any way. I've never. I have that. If I have a gift, that's it. I have no pride. So I started
it's a great
doing
gift
that.
to have.
Yeah.
There's so many talented people who will just never take that step and never get on the damn stage.
Right. It's hard.
Yeah, it is.
That is a tough thing.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying to get on stage.
It is. And so, yeah, I started doing that. I was 15, and I played every bar. They would make me, and I don't know how long you've been doing it, but I used to have to get off a stage, and we'd play 3 sets. And in between the sets, I would have to sit beside the stage in a chair in a cordoned off area because I wasn't allowed to be in the bar. So they'd make me sit right there. And my mom and dad were great. They said, you can stay out as long as you got to stay out, but come straight home and you got to go to school tomorrow. And I always did.
See, you're used to it. You're used to staying out late and getting home early and go have school night.
Never gotten a full night's sleep in my life.
No, you brought up when you were talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had a flashback. Back east, I was in this thing in high school called PCC. It's Project Contemporary Competitiveness. Wow. So, for the Smarty Pants kids, and they went to college for like 6 weeks in the summer. But I took like music and movement because I was a dancer and a singer and did all that. Music and movement and law. Okay, so that kind of gives you a nutshell how my brain works. But I was up for at the end of this thing, you sing and you dance and you learn to do improv and all this other stuff. And it was up for entertainer of the year, or for the whatever. And I didn't get it. Someone else did. I didn't care, right? You're young. You're like, what are you in high school, right? I was like a sophomore in high school. But after, someone told me, the reason why you didn't get it is the proctor in charge said her singing is far superior to her dance. Her dancing is far superior to her singing. I stopped singing.
Right.
Because you're 15 and you hear that. So you hear, I was terrible.
Right.
I was terrible. And so it wasn't until I was in college and someone said, well, maybe your dancing was just so great. Didn't mean that your singing wasn't. And I remember thinking, but you're so young. Like, how many dreams? Like, you have one executive that crushes your hopes. Mine was hearsay from someone else saying that someone else said it. Like, I didn't even hear it, and I just kind of stopped.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, I'm not really good at it. So when you were just saying that 15, like, kudos to your parents. Like, because I sang in chorus and all this other stuff, but I didn't. My dance teacher was going to take me to Broadway, but it was for my dancing.
Right.
To have parents that were so supportive of you in high school to do that. Not that my parents weren't supportive.
Sure. Yeah.
I never told them about that conversation.
Right.
You just internalize it like, that's going to be horrible. To have that and to have that, like, I'm going on stage and I'm just going to do it. It's amazing.
Words matter.
Yeah.
They really do. Yeah. My mom and dad, there's long conversations we could have there, but my dad worked in an aluminum foundry till he retired. My mom worked at the body company where they made UPS trucks till she retired. Real jobs. And every fall, and then especially around Christmas time, it was inevitable. They would both get laid off because that's what happened. And then we struggled. The unemployment line, the government cheese, no milk for your cornflakes, And I can remember saying, I don't want to work. I don't want to have a real job. I don't want to work that hard. But B, I don't want to ever be in a position where I have to depend on people like that again. I got to find a way around working in this factory and suffering the way my mom and dad and my grandma and grandpas did, and my aunts and uncles. And so I told them from the very beginning I was going to find a way out. And they supported it. First of all, they knew I was not like anybody else. I was different. But they knew I had a dream and a drive, and they supported me all the way, even when they probably shouldn't have.
Well, it's amazing to have parents that don't have that life
to
be able to support yours and be like, follow your heart, even though that's not something we grew up with or that we're living, but we want more for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I mean, I can't even tell you what, how the little town that I grew up in, it was not even really a pipe dream. It was just, you were going to get a job, get somebody pregnant, and that's what you were going to do. And that's what everybody's life was going to be, and I wasn't going to have that. And for them to support me was something, and they did. They supported me because I didn't have any money, and what little money they had, they gave me.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Very grateful. Very, very grateful.
So I'm assuming Mellencamp was a large influence. Was he the influence or somebody else?
Yeah, no. I mean, I had a lot of influences, but when it comes to one person who was the North Star, and I say that almost literally because he was the guy that I said, I mean, I knew where Seymour, Indiana was, driven through there a million times.
That's what Seymour is. It's a truck stop.
Yeah.
It's a truck stop with a few houses around.
On the way to Louisville.
Yep.
It's, right.
It's halfway between Indianapolis and Louisville.
That's right. And I can remember when they gave away a pink house on MTV?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember
that
sitting
song
there.
is just playing in my head as you guys were talking about it.
I was sitting there watching MTV thinking, that guy's from, if he did it, maybe I can do it too. I can remember having that thought as I'm sitting here having these thoughts now. I remember having that thought. So yeah, it wasn't just his music. It was the idea that impossible dreams were not impossible.
Or also the fact that he went to Cougar and then went back to Mellencamp. Like, the corporations can't decide who you are.
Change your damn name.
Yes.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Everything about him. He was a giant influence. Also, he wrote about songs and things that I knew about, that those were, you went to the bar and you got in a fight and then you got a girl and, that was my life, And,
if anybody listening to this just thinks of Mellencamp is defined by a couple of hits, not only, the hits are great and his early stuff is great, but my God, when he got to that point midlife where he just said, I'm just going to make stuff I like.
Yeah.
Yep.
The songwriting is unbelievable.
There's one line in one song, and because I'm bad at sometimes the titles of songs, but as a kid, I was like, wow, it opened my eyes. Like, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything or everything. And I remember thinking, wow, you're young and you're like, at first you're like, what does that mean? Because you're young and stupid.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I know exactly what that means.
Yeah.
One thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, please. No, I was just agreeing.
I would say, I love Mellencamp. Springsteen's always been my main guy, and I think it's so beautiful. There was a time in the late 60s, early 70s when you could have imagined a government conspiracy because all the great rock and rollers were dying. They were dying. They were making it big and then dying. Their planes were crashing. They were overdosing. They were choking on their own vomit. Crazy stuff was happening. And now we're in an era where the Stones are still playing. Daltrey and Townsend are still with us. Oasis is about to have a reunion.
Yeah, right.
Springsteen is still touring the world.
Yeah.
Mellencamp's still playing.
Right.
And one of the great hallmarks of this era is that Springsteen and Mellencamp have become like best friends.
Yeah.
It's
I didn't
beautiful.
know that. How did I not know that?
It's like they'd always been run on parallel tracks, and they got to a certain point in their lives, and I think Mellencamp started asking them for some advice, and then they're actually good friends. It's beautiful.
It really is. And don't you love the idea of that?
Yes.
Don't you want your heroes to be friends?
Yes.
And to be, to sit in a room together and talk about cool things? I love that. Yeah. Man, Springsteen, huh? The lyrics, the forethought. Imagine sitting down in a room and saying, legitimately, I'm going to write one of the greatest songs of all time today. And then writing Born to Run. Because that's what he did. He sat down.
And he did it. And you talk about the difficulties of the music business. He had put out 2 albums. He was a young hotshot. Record companies thought he was the next Dylan, which he wasn't. But he wrote a little bit like Dylan for a while.
Atlantic City. Yeah, right. Yeah.
But you go back to his first 2 albums are almost experimental.
Sure.
They're like there are no hits on them. And the record company's like, dude, you produced 0 hits. This is your last chance. Born to Run was maker. He either was going to be playing in bars on the Jersey Shore or he was going to be one of the world's greatest stars. And he sat down and wrote Born to Run.
Trade in these wings for some wheels.
Yep.
The cool thing I learned growing up was a lesson. So my very good friend, who's like my sister, she's now in a band out in Seattle. They're actually touring right now. It's called Acid Tongue. It's Faith Stankovich. So her dad, he changed his name, Joey Stan, and he was in Gary U.S. Bonds and
who Springsteen helped revive his career.
Well, so here I am a couple of years ago when the E Street Band first came to, and remember they named the street, in St. Paul,
E Street, yeah.
So I'm with friends and we're in the down on the floor. What's that called? The bullpen, the pit.
Yeah.
And so I'm in the pit. I never had that experience before. So I'm going and like we're body surfing Bruce. And all of a sudden I look up and I'm like, it's Mr. Joey.
No kidding.
And I'm staring and my friends are like, why are you looking at this guy playing the saxophone? I'm like, it's Mr. Joey. And it was my friend Faith's dad. that I have seen, and he's played in many different bands, and he can play 2 saxophones at once. But it's amazing. I saw him once in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. He wasn't with Gary U.S. Bonds, and I can't think of the other band, and it's another bigger one. But they all are friends with Bruce. They're all from that area, and they all come and play with each other. But I remember distinctly how through it didn't matter, divorces and changing bands and all of that, they're all still friends. And now to see Mr. Joey, I mean, Faith and I are adults now, up there playing because they needed a saxophone player. Now, Clarence's nephew was there too, but they had bolstered it. And that's what I call him, Joey Stan. Joey Stankovich is his official name, but I see Mr. Joey, that I used to call him as a kid, up there looking the exact same, just older, playing away.
Wow.
And seeing him with Bruce. I'm like, that's friendship.
Yeah.
That's music bonding people.
Yeah.
And so I just, even as a young kid seeing that, it doesn't matter where you go or how big you are, like the friendships, it's all about relationships that matter, and it made the music better. My friends, they were teasing me, like, you're like mesmerized by whoever Mr. Joey was, and we were body surfing Bruce, and I'm like, yeah, but, I think that stuff just makes it richer in my mind, like, it makes the music better. So to hear like Bruce and John Mellencamp are friends, I'm like, oh, it just transcends it all for me, I think.
Yeah. It's communication, man.
Yeah.
It's communicating. I love it so much. And it's funny too. I was just listening to a book that, what's it, Tipping Point. What's his name?
Oh, Malcolm Gladwell?
Yeah. Gladwell did with Paul Simon.
Oh, I haven't read that one.
Oh my goodness. And if you listen to the audiobook, it's even better because it's Malcolm and Paul Simon talking.
Oh, really?
It's unbelievable.
Really?
And just talking about how he wrote some of those songs and the communication and how Malcolm was like, this is this song that I love, and here's what you say, and here's what you meant. And Paul's like, that's not what I meant. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Because the song isn't finished ever. You decide what it means to you. That's not what I meant at all.
Just like Take You With Me. Like I was saying, it means something different to
For
me.
sure.
But
right.
wow.
I love it. It's just, there's something magic there. I don't know. Again, it's the math. It's the unspoken language. I don't know what it is, but there's something that connects us all. I love that.
There's a science behind it too. I was just listening to a Mel Robbins podcast, who I love, by the way. And there is a science behind like walk-up songs.
Yeah.
Like there's a science behind if you pick a song, like there's different kinds of music that if it helps you study better, that helps you perform better. Now there's that different, like, it's not, I don't know what the something Z is, but there's some that make you like kind of zone out better. The megahertz versus whatever. We've all known that in radio, AM, FM has different things, but there's like different frequencies of music that help you perform better. And there's a science behind it. So like you say, there's math, there's science, there's so much more to it that we don't even, it's like my head is like exploding, when I listen to that podcast, I'm like, oh my gosh. Walk-up songs matter? I thought they were just fun, but it can pump you up.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And take you down and help you mellow out. There's this guy in college, he was from Mexico City, this guy, Roberto Ayala, and he was beautiful, first of all. And I'm walking by his room and I see him, but he's cleaning and he has classical music on. Mm-hmm. And he said, it just helps me get into the zone, and I clean because his dorm room is like the cleanest I've ever seen in my entire life. And so now to this day, if I put on classical music and I'm cleaning my house, I get it done so much faster. It might just be a weird thing, but the music is involved in that.
I read an article a long time ago. It must have been a New York Times. It sounds like a New York Times type article. And they said that the Beatles, if you broke down their music mathematically, scientifically, they wrote almost an identical patterns to Mozart and Beethoven.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah. It's the math.
I just got chills.
It's the math. I heard Keith Richards, of all people, say, fascinating guy, by the way.
Yes.
Truly, truly brilliant. And he was talking about, somebody asked him about the creative process and why he was able to write so many songs and why the Beatles were able to write so many great songs. And I also heard Paul McCartney say this, but he actually credited Keith with being the one that brought it to him. There's these songs just float in the air. This art, these words, these patterns. They just float in the air. And some people just have bigger antenna, and they're able to reach up and grab them. And Keith was talking about Paul and John and saying they had the biggest antenna in the world for about 10 years. Think about that.
It's amazing.
Well, isn't it? I think I also heard a story too that Let It Be was written, that Paul wrote that, if I'm correct.
Yep.
But it came to him in a dream. And he went to them saying, "Hey, who sings this song? Like, who wrote that?" And they're like, well, "We've never heard that song. Well, never." And he's like, "No. Who sing? I woke up singing it." They're like, "It's not a song." And then they're like, "Well, it should be a song." And then Let It Be came out. I was like, "Oh, that's an antenna right there."
A couple of recommendations for you. If you haven't seen the Beatles doc, you got to go see it.
Oh, I haven't.
It's unbelievable. It's these guys. Because one of the great. You know what we're going to have to do? We're going to have Chris come back to continue the conversation another time, or this is going to go 18 hours.
Yeah, I love it.
But the Beatles doc, it's stunning. And one of the great reminders it gives you is that these guys grew up playing together. Then they went over to Berlin and played 8-hour shifts where they would have to play every hit song ever written and improvise off each other and make stuff up and kill time and jam it out.
Really?
So they'd be in the studio. They're in the studio like trying to work on a song, and somebody hit a note and they all go, and they'd all know what song that note led into, and they'd just sit there and jam on that song for a while. I think the idea of genius is really interesting because the genius doesn't show up if you don't put in incredible amount of hours.
Let's go back to Gladwell again, 10,000 hours, man.
Yep.
I love that documentary. I loved it for a million reasons, and I understand why people didn't, but I loved it because of the minutia.
Yeah.
I loved watching them talk to each other.
Yes.
I loved, when Paul sits down and he picks up a guitar and he writes, not Come Together.
Get Back.
Yeah, he writes Get Back. As you're watching him doing it, you're singing in real time. He's writing the damn song, and there's a camera on him as he's doing it.
Oh my goodness,
it's amazing. But I loved seeing them sit at a table and be people.
Yeah,
I think maybe it's been framed as that they really didn't like each other. Maybe there's something to that, but to watch them like each other made my heart happy.
I think they liked each other and just hit this same crap that all bands end up hitting. But there's no doubt they loved each other,
So this reminds me of a great story that Mark Langston, former pitcher, California Angels, told me this story. So he's out in California, and he's really good friends with Bruce Hornsby. And so he went to his house one day, and they were having a jam session. He goes, "I'm just going to sit in the corner. I'm just a baseball player." But again, the connection, athletes to musicians. So he's sitting there, and he goes, it's a hot August day, and he named all the people. I'm not even going to name, but they're all like jam session. He goes, and then out of nowhere, like this guy comes in, black jeans, black hoodie, kind of comes in and sits down next to Bruce at the piano. I'm like, what is this guy doing? Takes out crumpled pieces of paper. It goes like this, starts saying, "Well, it's Bob Dylan."
Oh my.
He goes, and all of a sudden I'm like, it's flipping Dylan.
Yeah.
And he's just jamming. He goes, and I'm just sitting there thinking, I am witnessing greatness. And he goes, and I'm just in the corner of the room going, oh my God. And he says, like, it just, in any jam session, it comes to this crescendo, right? And he goes, and there's this crescendo, and I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my God. He goes, my eyes are closed, and I'm loving it. He goes, but I open up my eyes, and I see him take the crumpled pieces of paper, stick them in his pocket, and just leave. Yeah. He goes, like, he left before, like,
That's
and
so
everyone,
Dylan.
like, they were done, and they're like,
so
where'd he go? And he goes, and he heard he took the city bus to get there. And I am just like, that is genius. He goes, but the music, he goes, I can't even describe it. It will never be a record. Mm-hmm. The beauty that was in that, he goes, that is a lifelong thing that I will always take with me, that experience. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Two other recommendations.
Yeah.
25th anniversary Rock and Roll Hall of Fame concert. Have you seen it?
No.
No.
Oh my God.
Is that the one with Prince?
No.
Okay.
No, this is the one with Paul. So it's basically all the greats playing off of each other, and like the highlights are Simon and Garfunkel, but also like Smokey Robinson with Stevie Wonder. One of the highlights is Sting and Stevie Wonder doing a mashup of Higher Ground and Roxanne.
Whoa.
It's one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life.
And what is this from?
25th anniversary Rock and Roll Hall of Fame concert.
Wow.
I don't know where you get it anymore. I bought it on Apple, so it's like my travel thing. It's Metallica playing with Lou Reed. It's Springsteen playing with Sam from Sam and Dave, and John Fogerty and Billy Joel, and it's unbelievable.
Wow.
It's just unbelievable. And Jeff Beck is like the main guitarist throughout it, and he plays with oh God, I'm blanking on the great blues guitarist Buddy Guy. I mean, it just goes on and on. It's just the greatest ever playing with each other. So check that out. I believe
Jeff Beck did a really good People Get Ready.
Yes,
with his guitar, right? Years ago. And I sang that at Boston College. It was like everyone like went away for like whatever the holiday was, but I had to work it. Yep. So I'm like I'm like, let's do this. My friend in the dorm was a guitarist. And I'm like, can we sing People Get Ready like the Jeff Beck style? And he's like, let's do it. Yeah. And I even saw the priest go like, oh, wow. When you're rocking it that way, it's just a different rendition. People didn't give him enough credit for that kind of stuff too.
He's amazing. And the other recommendation is Roy Smalley on our Chin Music Baseball podcast. About once a year, I have him tell the story. He's on his honeymoon in Jamaica. He meets two little British children. They introduce them to the mother, Linda. And then the guy swimming laps out in the bay comes over. It's Paul McCartney. They end up hanging out with him all week. He plays an unreleased record for them. They were the first to hear an unreleased. I can't remember if it was a Wings or it must have been a Wings album at that point. And they're all sitting around the table one night, and Roy's new wife, still his wife, she starts giggling. And like Linda McCartney's like, okay, you got to let us in on the joke. And Roy's wife says, well, I'm here because I'm married to him, points at Roy, but I always thought I'd be here because I married him. And she points at
Brilliant. That's great.
That's awesome. Wow. Well, I hate to like kind of switch away from music, but I'm always fascinated when someone is in love with something so much and then it kind of gets over into the sports area. Right. Like I know it's because you love athletes, like musicians and athletes, but is that how it happened? Like, you're just as much, if someone says Chris Hawkey, they think sports. They think Vikings. It's kind of a cool thing to be so dualistic.
Yeah, that's completely luck. I grew up playing football in my little small town, but I'm 5'6", and I've been 5'6" since I was in 6th grade. So there was nothing, there was nothing more than just high school sports for me. But again, the Big Red Machine and WLW and the Cincinnati Bengals, my dad and we would listen to all the games. There's something about radio I should say baseball on the radio, man. There's just something about it. So I've always loved talk radio and I've always loved sports. But the great thing for me about working at the Fan and being on the power trip and working for the Vikings is that, to be honest with you, I'm not a giant sports fan. I am. Football is probably my favorite sport. NASCAR and racing is my number one favorite sport.
Nice.
But I'm from Indiana. What are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
But so I think the great thing for me is that I've been able to look at sports as a job, in that I can work for the Vikings and go do this and put my heart into it and learn as much as I can about it. But it's not going to kill me if they lose.
Yeah.
I can
Which is the
watch
way
it.
everybody should be, frankly.
It really is. And I'll tell you, the only time I made the mistake was 2009. And I will never forget, after Brett, Mr. Favre, threw the interception, looking at Brandon Molesky, 10B, Common Man's producer, and he and I made a promise that we would never care that much again. Because it's... you got to remember it's your job. You have to remember that you have a job to do. And I know you guys are both pros at that. And you're not able to tell the truth if you're thinking only with your heart.
Right.
And so I as somebody who I came to sports radio because of my love of radio, I think that has really helped me in my job very much.
I'm going to interrupt.
Yeah.
This is the kind of conversation that I could keep going for hours. We're not going to do that to people. We're not going to make them listen to an 8-hour podcast.
Yes.
What I would like to do, and I'm going to put you on the spot, is invite you back for another time for another round of music and sports talk. So I don't feel like this is the end of the conversation, because I love this conversation. But I don't want to make Alex Haugen, our producer, sit here for 4 more hours, and I don't, So I just
He's like,
feel
who are the Beatles?
Yeah, right now. Yeah.
I just think we need to put a cap on this because otherwise I will sit here and talk to you all day.
I would love it.
I would love to have you back. You let us know when it works for you. We would love to have you back. This is my favorite kind of conversation, and I think people have already figured this out, but just to state it, I admire what you do so much.
Thank you.
And the sports radio stuff it's fantastic, and I'm so glad you had this much success. But the music stuff, it's so hard. It's so hard to make your way in that world, and the fact that you're still slugging it out, I just admire so much.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and I know I talk a lot. So, but especially when it comes to music, it really is, as I've said, it's such a major part of my life, and it's been there for me. Geesh, at the best and worst times. So, I'm always here to talk about music, and always here to talk to you both. I appreciate the opportunity, and I love to do the radio show with the guys, but I also love the opportunity to sit down without parameters and just have a conversation.
Yes, I don't think you talk a lot. I think you speak from the heart, and people want to hear that. So I'm very thankful because I'm like, oh, these stories I've never heard. So thank you for sharing them because you're going to touch someone else too. They'd be like, that's what I was thinking, and now I can do that too.
I appreciate that. One of my major things in my life, this second half of my life is going to be promoting mental health, and I am a big advocate of talking to each other about that and making it so it's not under the table, so that perhaps, as I said, feed the river with music. Maybe one day you'll speak to somebody and ask them if they're okay on the day they needed to be asked. So I got stories, I got things to say, and I'd be honored to come back again. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Love it.